Let me disrupt something real quick. A lot of people believe emotional health means not feeling negative emotions. That belief alone has confused millions of people. Because if that were true, then anyone who feels concern, sadness, regret, or frustration would be emotionally unhealthy. And that's obviously not true. Concern is a part of caring. Sadness is a part of loving. Frustration is a part of learning. And regret is a part of growing. The real question is not, did I feel something uncomfortable? The real question is, where did that emotion take me? Because emotions don't just appear, they move. They shape perception. They shape interpretation. And interpretation eventually shapes identity. Let me show you something powerful. Two people can experience the same mistake, the same criticism, the same rejection, and walk away with completely different emotional lives. Not because the event was different, because the interpretation was different. And interpretation determines emotional trajectory. Some interpretations slowly disconnect you from yourself. Let me show you something you'll start noticing everywhere once you see it. Every emotional experience eventually reaches what I call the emotional fork in the road. Picture this. Something happens. Maybe someone criticizes you. Maybe you make a mistake. Maybe something you cared about didn't work out. Emotionally, you're walking down the road. And eventually that road splits. One path leads to learning, growth, repair, self-respect, and resilience. The other path leads towards rumination, self-attack, withdrawal, and disconnection. Same event, different emotional life. Concern and anxiety split here. Regret and guilt split here. Disappointment and shame split here. Frustration and intolerance split here. Remorse and self-hatred split here. The direction your emotional life takes is determined by how you interpret the moment. So as we go through these emotional pairs, quietly ask yourself something. Which road do I usually take? Because awareness of the fork is what gives you the ability to choose differently next time. Before we talk about emotional trajectories, we have to talk about your relationship with self. Because emotions do not exist in isolation. They exist inside a relationship. In Grow Yourself Great, we begin with family. But family does not start outside of you. Family starts inside you. Family means first and most importantly, love yourself. And here's something many people don't realize. Every human being has an internal tribe, a community of self. Different of you experience the world differently. One part of you may feel hopeful. Another part may feel cautious. Another part may feel protective. Another part may feel wounded. Another part may feel angry. Emotional maturity is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to relate wisely to the emotional voices inside your internal family. Because the real question isn't, do I have emotions? The real question is, how do I interpret the emotions I have? And those interpretations determine your emotional trajectory. Concern versus anxiety. Let's start with the first pair. Concern is the emotion of caring about an outcome. Concern says, this matters. I want to prepare. I want to think about this. Concern often leads to planning, learning, preparation, thoughtful action. Concern activates attention, but it does not collapse the nervous system. Concern is a healthy signal of investment. If you care about a relationship, you will feel concerned. If you care about your career, you will feel concerned. If you care about your child, you will feel concerned. Concern is care thinking about the future. Anxiety. Now watch what happens when interpretation shifts. Anxiety appears when the mind catastrophizes possibilities. Instead of asking, what can I do about this? The mind begins asking, what if everything goes wrong? What if I fail? What if this becomes a disaster? Concern imagines possibilities. Anxiety predicts catastrophe. Internal dialogue, me, myself, and I. Let me show you how this shift happens inside the mind. Because emotions rarely speak with one voice. Inside your mind, there are often three voices or more: me, myself, and I. And they don't always agree. Me says, this presentation tomorrow matters. I should prepare. That's concern. Then myself says, but what if you mess it up? Then I says, what if everyone realizes you're not as competent as they think? And suddenly, concern becomes anxiety. The event didn't change. The internal conversation did. Psychological trajectory: concern, preparation; competence, confidence; anxiety, rumination; paralysis, overwhelm. Concern is like checking the weather before leaving the house. You bring a jacket. You plan ahead. Anxiety is seeing a cloud and assuming a hurricane is coming. Same event, different emotional life. Regret versus guilt. Let's move to the next pair. Regret. Regret occurs when we reflect on the decision and recognize, I wish I had handled that differently. Regret focuses on behavior, not identity. Regret says, that choice did not align with the person I want to be. Because regret evaluates behavior, it leaves room for change, learning, growth, repair. Regret says, next time, I will do this differently. Guilt. Now watch the shift. Instead of focusing on behavior, the mind focuses on identity. Instead of made a mistake, the mind begins saying, I am the mistake. Regret evaluates a choice. Guilt evaluates a person. Trajectory: regret, reflection, adjustment, growth; guilt, rumination, self-criticism, emotional weight. Regret is realizing you took a wrong turn while driving. You adjust the route. Guilt is deciding you should never be allowed to drive again. Same mistake, different emotional life. Disappointment versus shame. Disappointment occurs when expectations and reality don't match. Disappointment says, outcome was not what I hoped for. Disappointment exists because something mattered. If something didn't matter, you wouldn't feel disappointed. Disappointment still allows forward movement. It says, that didn't work, let's reassess. Shame. Shame appears when disappointment becomes identity judgment. Instead of evaluating the result, the mind evaluates the self. This didn't work becomes, there must be something wrong with me. Disappointment evaluates outcomes. Shame evaluates identity. Trajectory: disappointment, recalibration, resilience; shame, withdrawal, disconnection. Disappointment is stumbling on the stairs. Shame is believing you don't belong on the staircase. Same event, different emotional life. Annoyance versus anger. Annoyance is irritation. Annoyance says, I don't like what just happened. Annoyance often signals communication adjustment, boundary setting. Annoyance is informational. It tells you something needs attention. Anger. Anger appears when irritation becomes moralized. Instead of, I wish that didn't happen, the interpretation becomes, that must not happen. That must never happen. Now the nervous system shifts from communication to confrontation. Trajectory: annoyance, communication, resolution; anger, escalation, conflict. Annoyance is the dashboard warning light. Anger is the engine overheating. Same event, different emotional life. Frustration versus intolerance. Frustration is the emotion of difficulty. Frustration says, this is hard, but it still assumes I can work through it. Frustration stretches your capacity. Frustration is how the nervous system builds resilience. Intolerance appears when interpretation shifts. I can't stand this. Difficulty becomes interpreted as unbearable. Trajectory: frustration, persistence, mastery; intolerance, avoidance, stagnation. Frustration is lifting a heavy weight at the gym. It's difficult, but that's how strength grows. Intolerance is dropping the weight and deciding strength is impossible. Same challenge, different emotional life. Remorse versus self-hatred. Remorse occurs when we recognize we have hurt someone. Remorse says, I did something wrong. Remorse motivates repair, responsibility, and change. Remorse protects relationships because remorse leads to accountability. Self-hatred appears when the mistake becomes a total identity judgment. Instead of, I did something wrong, the mind says, I'm a terrible person. Remorse evaluates behavior. Self-hatred condemns identity. Trajectory, remorse, accountability, healing. Self-hatred, isolation, despair. Remorse is cleaning up after a mess you made. Self-hatred is burning down the house because something broke. Same mistake, different emotional life. GYG system connection. Understanding emotional trajectories strengthens the GYG system. Think it, speak it, do it. Healthy emotional processing keeps alignment between thinking, communication, and behavior. Escalated interpretations break that alignment. IDC, intentional, deliberate, creative. Reflective emotions create space for intentional awareness, deliberate choices, creative solutions. Escalated emotional interpretations collapse these capacities. Devotion. Devotion means maintaining a relationship with yourself even when emotions fluctuate. Instead of abandoning yourself when emotions intensify, devotion says, I will stay with myself while I figure this out. Emotions are not enemies. They are signals about how we are interpreting life. Concern and anxiety, regret and guilt, disappointment and shame, annoyance and anger, frustration and intolerance, remorse and self-hatred. Each pair represents two interpretations of the same human experience. An interpretation determines trajectory. Some trajectories lead to growth. Some trajectories lead to disconnection from self. But when you understand the trajectory, you gain something powerful like awareness. And awareness gives you choice. If this helped you understand your emotional world a little clearer, or helped you understand someone you loved, then you are exactly why this space exists. Grow Yourself Great is about understanding the systems that shape our lives. Because when you understand your internal world, you can respond to it with greater clarity. If you want me to go deeper on a specific psychological concept or emotional experience, put it in the comments. I will read them. I will build from them. This is not just content. It's a learning community. And we grow better when we grow together. Grow Yourself Great.